Joining me now to discuss Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General's upcoming closed-door hearing with Congress Wednesday, the latest on the Mueller probe, Andrew McCarthy. Andy is a former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, a distinguished former federal prosecutor, National Review contributing editor, and Fox Business contributor. Great to have you with us, Andy. Let's start with...
Great to be with you, Lou.
Great to have you here. Let's start with Rosenstein and whether or not he is going to be fired. I mean, he has basically endorsed the Mueller investigation. This is almost as outrageous as Trey Gowdy, the lame duck congressman, having endorsed the FBI's activity last May, saying we would be just thrilled with the way they've handled themselves and don't worry about Donald Trump. He had nothing to do with the bias against him, had nothing to do with the investigation.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't expect, Lou, that Rosenstein would say anything other than that he was endorsing the investigation because he ordered the Mueller investigation. He's the one who appointed Mueller. He's been supervising him throughout. And if he were suddenly at this point to say that the investigation was politicized or inappropriate, that it wasn't supported by the regulations, as we've pointed out a number of times, that it was unnecessary because there was no reason the Justice Department couldn't have investigated in the normal course anything that needed to be investigated. If Rosenstein were to say those things, it would be an indictment of himself at this point. So I wouldn't expect him to do that.
Should he be indicted by others?
I guess maybe indicted was the wrong word. He should certainly, he is certainly the person who is responsible for all this. And as I've said from the get-go, I do not believe that a good faith interpretation of the special counsel regulations supported an appointment of a special counsel in this case.
And he's going before, the joint, a form of the joint committees of Judiciary and Oversight in the House. And facing him will be two lame duck chairmen, Trey Gowdy, Bob Goodlatte, and Jerry Nadler, and Elijah Cummings, the ranking Democrats. They have just turned oversight into a four-person proposition. And frankly, I don't trust any one of those four to do anything correctly in probing the Deputy Attorney General's conduct, his excuses, and his failures. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've thought from the beginning, Lou, that the best thing that we could have here in terms of the investigation and in not only Mueller's investigation, but the investigation of the FBI tactics that were used in the run-up to the election is transparency. I think that we should be arguing in favor of open-door hearings at this point. The more disclosure, the better. The more information put out, the better. And the more people participating in it, the better. I really don't see anything productive that comes out of a closed-door session with a very limited number of people from Congress, and in particular, not the people who've been pushing this investigation aggressively. I'm very worried about the way this is unfolding.
And do we have the quote from Trey Gowdy? Because it's to me one of the most. Here we go. Here's Gowdy on the Russia probe from the end of May this year. I am, after looking at evidence, quote unquote, I'm even more convinced that the FBI did exactly what my fellow citizens would want them to do when they got the information they got, and that it has nothing to do with Donald Trump. That is one of the most insipid, if not corrupt, comments that could have been made, politically corrupt comments that could have been made about the FBI investigation. Your reaction?
Lou, every single one of the affidavits or the applications for FISA surveillance of Carter Page that was presented to the FISA court stated that the FBI believes that the Trump campaign is complicit in Russia's, what they had described as Russia's cyber espionage, which is the hacking business. I can't understand how anybody, having looked at those applications, can take the position that this had nothing to do with President Trump. I can't understand how anybody listening to former Director Comey's testimony, where he said that one of the people advising him advised him that he shouldn't tell President Trump he's not a suspect because, of course, they were conducting an investigation of the Trump campaign, which was ultimately an investigation of the now president. I don't see how anybody who read this testimony and who is aware of these documents that were presented to courts could take that position.